Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Chit, Chat, and Chill. Our organization is very much against the cancel culture that exists today. So when we have dialogue, we're open to all points of view without judgment. Welcome to the conversation.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're doing a mental health check-in. So, mental health in this country is such a taboo topic, especially in minority communities. Um, I feel like we aren't encouraged enough to discuss specifically what's going on in our brains and our bodies. So tonight we're going to do that a little bit, and we hope that through sharing our stories, it helps you to start to share yours with others. So with that, I'm going to kick it out over to LaShawn, who's going to talk through our first question from her perspective, which is, what mental health struggles have you been dealing
So for me, I mean, in the past, I've had panic attacks, but that's not something that is ongoing. But if you've ever had a panic attack, it's really kind of a crazy experience, very bizarre. We can talk about that more later if you guys want. But something that I am really deal with every year and is really relevant right now because it's winter is seasonal affective disorder, also known as like SAD, also known as like basically seasonal blues, where like in the winter time you get really like basically depressed. So for me, it doesn't happen immediately. It's not as soon as it gets cold. My personal experience is that over time, the longer winter goes on, like by around this time, February or March, I start getting down. And there's a lot of theories about treatments for it, but one of the main things is like vitamin D. That they believe like the lack of sunlight is part of the problem for that this disorder. So they recommend that people use like UV lights in their house to get some of that artificial sunlight, or just find ways to be outside. um February's been a rough month, so if anybody out there has this disorder, it is hard to find like the natural sunlight because it's been so cloudy, so snowy, so cold. You can't really get out there, so it's definitely a relevant thing for right now. I am not currently feeling depressed, but I feel the lows slowly moving in little by little. So I have to hurry up and get ahead of it as much as possible. So anybody else?
I don't mind going next, and then maybe Aaron and then Ant. Uh, so I also deal with depression regularly. I've been dealing with depression probably since high school, probably the peak of it, honestly, because after high school, I started to learn to deal with it. I went to a really tough high school, and the stress of that on top of our childhood issues that we all have growing up, I had some instability issues that led me to be depressed and sad. And so that's something that comes and goes. And last year, I kind of hit me hard. We'll get into that more later. Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about yours?
So I have actually been diagnosed with depression. That was about eight years ago, going almost on 9. And then I've been struggling with other mental health aspects, just due to like you said, some childhood trauma, that it took me a while to ask for help for. Um, it's been a lot better, I think, in the last probably like the last 5 or 6 years. But that's through tons of counseling.
Yeah.
I deal with anxiety and, of course, other mental health issues from childhood, things that creep back in throughout your life. Definitely anxiety. And it's comes from so those that know me know that I used to stutter very badly, very bad, to the point where I had to go see a what's that called? A pathologist. They're not pathologist. That was a speech pathologist. And I had to go see one. So the idea of communicating triggered So the idea of communicating triggered my anxiety, which made me overthink about what I was going to say, which actually triggered more to me stuttering. So it was kind of like a dual thing. So my mom would be like, boy, slow down. And then I had to you got to trick your brain almost to get to yourself to like, okay, cool. But yeah, other things as well.
So I think we've each touched a little bit on what is causing our issues specifically, but does anyone want to go into more detail about their issue specifically or what triggered it? Because I feel like we touched on it a little bit, but is there anything more that we want to talk about before we get into the question, which is, have they been amplified during COVID at all?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So I know in 2012 specifically, when I was diagnosed with depression, my dad had died. I felt like I was being tormented. At the time, the manager we had was literally terrorizing us. And that's not even being dramatic, because all the management under her quit and half the staff quit. And then aside from, I was having issues in my marriage. So those three together, I found that getting out of bed, like if I had to work, I would cry. I would cry. My stomach would start hurting. Like I could not get out of bed. So when I went to the doctor and I told them about what was going on, that's when she said, okay, you have depression. And then also I had an ulcer from all that other stress. So they gave me Xanax. I never took it. I'm not big on taking medication in general. I don't think it works really. So I didn't take it. And then I was abused as a kid. So that in itself, I have trust issues. I would say, aside from trust issues, it takes a lot for people to get close to me. And by close to me, that's like for you to probably see me is close to me. I did a lot of counseling. I think I've had at least 5 or 6 different therapists through the years. Therapists are like clothes. You have to try them on because they all have different techniques. And I found that the ones that are more religious based work for me, actually work better for me. I've had some that I really liked, and I've had to change due to insurance changes. In 2012, I was so overwhelmed with life. I left. I quit my job. I quit my marriage. I moved a whole nother state. That was I think I was gone for like 3 months. But that was in that amount of time I was able to breathe and get some peace and quiet. It was hard being away from my family and my kids especially, but I needed that. Like I had to have that to survive, because I don't know if I would have made it. I probably would have made it. I don't know what that would have looked like though.
Got it.
The depression aspect, it comes and it goes. It gets worse when I don't ask for help. Like everybody else, I have a lot on my plate, which is normally manageable. It's when I don't ask for help, because I'm like, everybody has something going on. How can I ask somebody else for help? And I don't know what they got going on. So then I don't ask for help. And 2019 actually was the worst I've ever experienced it. I felt like I could see myself literally drowning, which was weird, but I could see myself literally drowning. I had to get help because I literally thought about driving off a bridge. Like, if Jace was not with me, I was in a rental car. I didn't want to leave Derek that headache. But
Oh my goodness.
that's my practical man. I'm always thinking.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I was like, okay, I have to like do something. But that time, I honestly don't know what sparked it, because at that point I was doing pretty well, but it just snuck up on me.
It comes and goes, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that Aaron mentioned that are really important that I want to talk about before I get into the other stuff. Self-care is so important.
So
yes, disappearing for 3 months is difficult when you're running away from your kids and your family. But without that, you know, you might not be able to get through things. So people, make time for yourself, take care of yourself. And the other thing is, don't give up on therapy just because you don't like the one therapist you try. Like Aaron said, you got to try on different people. You got to see what works for you. I don't know if any of you watched This Is Us, where he was like trying out different therapists. I thought that was a great like part of the show, because it shows people it's not like a one size fits all thing. You have to find somebody that speaks to you, that understands you, that you feel like you can talk to. And the same thing is, I'm not big on medication either, but if you do really need medication, don't give up on that either, because you might have to try several different types of medication and different dosages before you find one that works. So all of that is very important. So I'm glad that Aaron kind of touched on those things. So I was a student of psychology.
Right.
So,
it's not just coming from nowhere.
So growing up, like Shantae mentioned, we had a lot of crazy stuff that, you know, we went through when we were younger. But like, so I thought going throughout early adulthood that I just had regular depression, that, you know, it just crept up on me. And actually, being a student of psychology, I learned about the seasonal affective disorder while taking psychology. And it probably still took me like another year or two to realize that was my problem. Like, that I literally was only suffering in those late winter months when it was just like enough was enough. I couldn't take being in the house anymore and all of that. So before that, I just thought I was depressed. And I used to just like have breakdowns where you just cry for no reason. And people be like, what's wrong with you? I have no idea what's wrong with me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not even particularly stressed out right now. I literally don't know what's wrong. It's a chemical imbalance. So then once I realized it was seasonal, it was kind of like almost a weight off my shoulders that it wasn't like a constant depression, which is nothing obviously to knock people with constant depression, because that's a whole nother issue. And then so that actually helped me a lot, because then I knew how to deal with it. Like Aaron, I'm a very logical person. Like, even with panic attacks, I was able to stop my panic attacks by figuring out exactly what was causing them. And even when I had a panic attack, I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm having a heart attack. I'm way too young for a heart attack. This is the stuff that I was thinking as I'm having this panic attack. I'm like, I feel like I can't breathe, but I can definitely breathe. So why am I feeling like I can't breathe? Like, I'm so logical that I logicked my way through my panic attack. No one knew I was having a panic attack except for me and my brain. I'm sitting here like, what is going on? And I didn't even know what it was until later I told somebody what happened. And they were like, oh, you had a panic attack. And I'm like, no. And they were like, yes, that's a panic attack. And then I kind of looked it up and I was like, oh, this is a panic attack. Because this was like a long time ago that I first had. Well, I actually probably had a first panic attack when I was like 8, believe it or not. I remember like having one. But the second one was actually shortly after my mom passed. That's why I had a panic attack. I was back in the spot where I had got the news. And so it triggered a panic attack without me realizing that that's what was happening. So, yeah. So, I mean, I just think it's important for everybody to know these different things exist and that there are ways to deal with them, and you should go get diagnosed. And that's why I'm taking part in this, because, again, mental health shouldn't be taboo. People should take care of themselves. People should try different therapies. People should try different medication if you really need medication. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's interesting. Two things about how we largely think it out, even though we know we're not in our right mind, but we largely think it out. And then you always know, it's crazy how we always know what triggered it. And because I remember thinking to myself, like, man, how did I get to this? But I didn't do it until I was a doghood. I ain't know nothing about it. I mean, so I'm thinking like, how did I get here to this point? Like, why do I feel so much? And the thing is, it was a ripple effect. It started to spread in different areas. So I'm like, why did I get to this point? And I remember in class having to read out loud. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to read out loud. And I would have to literally like read. It's always crazy how you remember. I remember and I see it. I remember reading like it was paragraphs. So I remember jumping ahead and figuring out which paragraph and trying to figure out which paragraph I was going to read so I could practice over my mind how I was going to read it, what I was going to say, and look at every word and counting the sentences in the paragraph. And I was like, okay, I can read that. But then if something happened, my mental was all gone. And then the anxiety went higher. So it was just all messed up.
Yeah, no, this is all good. I'm glad that we're talking about it the way we are. You guys are very logical. I don't think that when I'm dealing with my issues, it's as clean. I feel like it's a little more messy. The first time I went to a therapist was in college after my mom passed. And that was just a point where I was just like beyond mentally, like I couldn't handle it and I needed to talk to someone. But before that, I had really just worked through it on my own. Music was big for me. I would listen to music and get myself through like hard situations. But at that point, no music could get me through that. So I was like, okay, fine. I'll talk to someone. And it helped so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I should have done this so much sooner. What was I waiting for? I was very happy that I did that. But I don't see a therapist regularly. Listening to you guys makes me want to. I feel like I only do it when I feel like I need to. When I'm out of control, I'm like, okay, I need help. And that definitely happened during COVID. I don't want to like get ahead of myself, but just a little background. Like I said, my depression, and then what caused me to talk to a counselor was my mother passed away. But then also, let me see what else. Yeah, there's just a lot of high stress points, I feel like, in my life. I feel like for all of us, and we all know science could back this up, but our childhood really does form how we end up like creating thoughts as an adult. And that's all I'm gonna say because I am not a student of psychology. I just know very basically your childhood.
No, childhood matters a great deal. And your mental health, a great deal.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about everything that you absorb as a kid, you absorb everything that adults tell you, whether it's good or bad. So if you have an adult constantly telling you that you're ugly or you're stupid or you're this or you're that will stay with you. If you have someone spreading positivity, but then other people are negative, all that carries with you as an adult. And there's a lot of different ways that these things manifest. So
I mean, majority of serial killers, for example, had serious childhood trauma. So, I mean, that just gives you an example of how much, childhood does affect you. Not all of them, but a majority of them have serious trauma.
Yeah, that stuff sticks with you, man. And it can mess you up a little bit, but it's good that we're talking about it. I'm just glad to be talking about it because I don't think we talk about it enough. And I think it's so normal to have this type of stuff going on in our lives. It's just so important to just have the conversation.
I don't know if I know anyone who couldn't benefit from a therapist. Like most people can benefit in some even little way from just a little bit of therapy, even if it's just to get you through like a rough death in your family. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had no depression in your life, or maybe you had no loss in your life till you're like 30 or 40. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, for the first time, you lose somebody. That in itself could be traumatic to someone who's like never been to a funeral and so way into their adulthood. So like there's different things that can trigger, and you have to learn how to cope with stuff that you never had to cope with before. So there's a lot of things. I think at some point in everyone's life, there's probably a need for some kind of therapy.
Yeah,
I agree. And also, I think the stigma in our community, we don't see it enough. And you could imagine like the children that have that trauma growing up and what they're seeing. And then, no disrespect to anybody listening, but we always, used to pray, go on and pray about it, pray. Like, oh, gotta do pray. Like, pray. And that's good enough. But the Bible says faith without works is dead. So you have to utilize your faith and to try to get everything together. Because I think it's a very serious issue. Because I know I know of family members that do deal with mental health and not getting it checked out. That leads to you really putting that off on your kids or whoever you have around you, and it leads and it goes, and it's like a generational thing if you don't get it checked out. So I definitely think anybody could. I go to a therapist. I ain't been in a minute, but I do go to one. So.
And I think to piggyback on what Aunt says, especially African Americans, we are very good with what happens in this house stays in this house. And we deal with things and things happen and we're taught to keep it within our walls. Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes you need to be able to talk to somebody. You need to extend yourself for help, but we don't do that because it's like, like you said, it's like this, it's a secret. Everything's a secret. And then you see these family traumas and these family predators and things of that nature that, we're going to deal with between us. And that's not the best way to handle it.
Right.
And one thing everyone said, and one thing that we want to make clear is that going to see a therapist is not weak. It's actually a sign of strength. And I just was piggybacking off, and I think about what Aaron was saying about how, we keep everything in-house. And it meant that you talk is like a sign of weakness. Like, it's a sign of strength to actually admit that you have issues. Like, that's a sign, because actually to admit, to look up and say, I have this issue, is actually a powerful thing, because that means you actually facing the person in the mirror, you facing yourself, who is the biggest critic. You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense, like, you actually facing yourself. So it's like, that's how I look at it.
There's so many people who go through the similar things. Like, there's strength in talking it out with people who have had similar experiences as you. Like, there's so much strength in that.
Or even people who don't have similar experiences as you, but they're still traumatic experiences. And I know, like, for me, when I was younger, I don't know why, but I used to think I was the only one who had problems. And it wasn't until I, became an adult where I was like, oh, everyone kind of has issues that they're dealing with. And so talking to people helps you to understand that. And just talking about it helps you to not feel alone in that sense too when you're younger. So if you're younger and you're feeling like you're alone in your issues, please know you are not. A lot of people are going through different things. It might not be the exact same, but it's still trauma. And it's still worth talking about, even if you're not comfortable talking about it with your family. Talk to your friends, talk to a therapist.
That's another good point. I feel like, especially teenager age, they're so like, they don't think anybody understands them. They don't think anybody knows what they're going through. And then if something traumatic does happen to them, I think they're much less likely to tell people. So any teenagers out there, if you guys have teenagers, make sure you're checking in, because for me personally, when I was a teenager, I didn't tell anybody anything of what I was thinking, feeling, being suicidal, all that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't tell anybody anything. I kept all of that to myself. I didn't even tell siblings. Like, nobody knew what was going on in my brain. So please check on your teenagers. Make sure you talk to them as much as they will talk to you. Sometimes you can get them going and they just start going and going and going. Don't have, like, I'm not gonna tell people how to parent, but like, open dialogue with your teenagers where you're like, okay, this is a judgment-free zone, you're not going to get in trouble. Let's just talk about some things. It's like, sometimes it's like therapeutic for them to get some things off their chest. So putting that out there.
And I worked with my girls, I think to probably a detriment, because now they talk crazy, but I worked with them growing up where we always had an open dialogue and they could say whatever they wanted to say in a respectful manner for that reason, so that they could never feel like there was nothing they couldn't talk to me about. And aside from that, they have other people's numbers just in case. And I've always expressed that too. If you can't talk to me, if you can't talk to your dad, you have a godmother, you have a host of cousin mothers, you have uncles, like, and I've always said that to them, that for the most part, unless it's something like urgent, they're not gonna tell me. You know what I'm saying? Like they gonna, but it's also, I direct them towards people that I know will give them good counsel. Cause some of these adults still dealing in their own mess don't always give the best advice. So I have steered them toward, like LaShawn, like people who I know are logical and not emotional. But yeah, I think it's so important to teach them that if you cannot talk to your parents, or you can't find, and not necessarily vent to another kid, but don't look to another kid for guidance, because they just as lost in this world as you are. So it's very important to keep a pulse on that, like LaShawn said.
And just to piggyback off of that, like, get wise counsel. Like, like that is so important, especially as a young man, to get who just not saying anybody particular, just throwing this out there because I'm thinking about this, especially for a young man that is growing up in this world, and we know what society that we live in, who may not have that male figure in their life. So when you go to the wrong male figure, then you creating a cycle. But it's like you have to use wisdom and pray and ask, and find out who is somebody that's going to give wise counsel. And I mean, that's going to tell you right from wrong, that's going to talk to you how you need to be talked to, that's going to nurture. Because even little boys, I ain't little boys, but even they need to be nurtured as well about how to go about life, So we just stress wise counsel. Could be some fools out here. So that's all. I just came in some kind of, whoa, can't talk to me about this. And he just be like, okay, let me go that way. So, because sometimes, like, you could talk to somebody, and you could be going through something, you can talk to somebody, and they can put you further back to where you were, and you'll be like, damn, I shouldn't have had that conversation. And you'll realize it after you did what you did. So it was just, that's all.
Yeah.
Well, try on your counselors like you try on your therapist and your medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was, how has COVID amplified your mental stressors at all? And if not, how have you been dealing with it during COVID, I guess we can say. Do you guys, I can start if you want.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that my depression definitely got worse in the very first maybe 3-4 months of the pandemic. We were super stressed out. We had just bought our first house and we moved in, and then we were just locked in this house with 2 small kids. Schools were closed. Everything was just kind of shut down. We're all of a sudden just working at home and figuring stuff out. And my coping mechanism for, like, when I feel my depression coming, I have gotten into meditation over the past few years, and I need like some quiet to work through and focus on positive, like, thoughts and stuff. And so that my coping mechanism got snatched away from me like so quickly. And I think I was so busy trying to, like, just figure out how I was going to keep working, keep the kids occupied, have a relationship with my husband, any type of relationship where we just figured out how to talk to each other through everything that was going on, because our days were literally him and I scheduling our calls, who's going to have a call when, who had calls when. We got to a point where we were each scheduling our work calls. We had to block off times and stuff. It was insane. And I was so stressed out from all of that. I, like, literally snapped at one point. And I had to, the only thing that brought me out of that was talking to my husband and just communicating it, because I wasn't communicating it at first. I was just holding it all in until I basically burst. And I didn't realize until I started talking to him and crying and just being, like, super raw, like, I can't do this anymore. We need to figure out a new plan. This is not going to work for me. And so with all of that going on, that probably ended in like April or May. We finally got into a groove and figured things out. My daughter went back to daycare in July. That helped a lot. But it was a lot of communicating with my husband because I was in a really stressful place. My work was really stressful last year as well, which didn't help. I was on a project that was like the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life during a pandemic while at home, stressed out. I mean, it was just totally amplified by this craziness that's going on right now. So that was me. And as far as like or how I dealt with it too, it wasn't just communicating with my husband. It was also just making sure I prioritized some alone time. I had to carve it out because I couldn't continue. I know we've talked a little bit about like not being able to continue. Like if I don't do this, you recognize when, if I keep going down this path, I know where it ends. I had to pause and carve out time early in the morning on Saturdays where I just don't engage with anyone until like lunchtime. I wake up slowly, I have my alone time, I do whatever I need to do, and then when I come down, I'm all in. I'm engaged, I'm everything I need to be. And that one morning a week is enough for me right now. If I ever need more, I talk to my husband about it. And he has similar times that are carved out. So for us, it's been space. Space has helped us to get through the pandemic. And again, I haven't felt the need to talk to a therapist, but if I do, I will. As long as this thing keeps going, it won't be too much longer. But yeah,
I have not had it anything amplified by COVID. I think mostly because I know what I'm dealing with, and I've known for years that I was able to avoid it before it like set in. So like with the pandemic hitting in March and us getting stuck home, so we had to cancel like vacation, which is normally like, that's why I go on vacation every like February, March. If you guys don't know, it's so I can bring myself out of the depression that is coming on to me. Like I can feel it. So having to cancel like the vacations and everything last year, I just made sure I was outside in the sun every day, all day, like as much as possible. So I was able to like kind of stave it off. And then all summer outside doing something. I think so many people took for granted work being an escape from like just the everyday home life, even escape from your spouse. If you stay home and your spouse goes to work, even that, the escape from your spouse for 6 to 8 hours to 12 hours, depending on your shift. I think people drastically underestimated that, and this pandemic has probably like made people appreciate their alone time, like you were saying, and all of that. But for me personally, nothing was amplified just because, and I also haven't had any personal like close losses during COVID. No one like super close to me. So I think that also helped me kind of dodge some things where, there's other people who have had losses during this time that I know were struggling. And I think that if I had a loss like that, it would have been a whole different story. But so far, oh my gosh, thank you, Lord. I've been okay. So
Yeah, during COVID, mine was more so I say in my anxiety act up financially, because I was used to working a certain shift. I was used to working making a certain amount of money. And then, COVID knocked it back. So it's like, okay, you got to pay the mortgage, you got assessments, you got this, you got that, you got car note, you got this. And I was like, okay, well, make some phone calls now. And then my anxiety, because what's going to get paid? What do you pay first? How do you pay first? How do you pay? What do you pay first? See, I stuttered. And she's like, what do I pay first? What happened? Things like that. So my anxiety kicked up and flared up just like that. And then which led to the overthinking. And then which led to because it's anxiety, period. Me being around people, me being at work, somebody cough, me scared to even walk outside in the around people, just stuff like that.
I haven't been hit hard. I've been consistently working with a counselor during this anyway. So I've been talking to somebody, and So I thought I was gone. I expected it to come because I got laid off. I was having marriage trouble, so I was like, Lord, that one more thing is gonna be a perfect trifecta. I'm like, crap. But God is good. So I missed out that third thing so far. But I've been okay for the most part.
That's awesome to hear. I'm sure that's not like typical, but whew. So how have you guys been taking care of yourself? I know you guys say that you're seeing counselors. Are you guys doing anything extra while we're sort of, I know, LaShawn, that you said that you're used to vacation around this time or planning one at least. Have you guys had to do anything extra to take care of yourself?
I still found a way to go on vacation. We went last June to a cabin in the woods by ourselves with our, immediate family that we already were seeing anyway. And that was really helpful. Like, just a getaway, like anything is good for my mental. And then staying outdoors when there was outdoor dining. Oh my gosh, that was like a godsend because I'm getting sun, which I need, and we're also like still going outside, that was probably the hardest part about the winter is that the outdoor dining got taken away and all of that. I'm sorry, we got a question, it's distracting me. Have you been affected by anyone else's mental health issues? How do you identify and address that? So personally, no one in my house right now has had anything. I keep checking on my teenager just to see, like, hey, you okay? Is then, are you depressed? Because I hear about all these teenagers who are going through so much because they're not in school and they're not being social and they're not around their friends. And I do just worry about their like social anxiety and stuff that they might end up developing down the road. But no, I haven't been affected. Have any of you guys been affected by someone else's mental health?
So I have a loved one, and I see a lot of me in that person, and I'm usually the one that talks them off the cliff. And it's hard sometimes because, like I said, sometimes people don't know what you going through before they lean on you. So I've been that shoulder for that person. And the biggest thing I have pushed is talk to somebody. Don't worry about labels. Who cares if you get labeled? Because you don't know the light at the end of that tunnel when you go talk to somebody and let it out. And somebody helps you identify where this pain is coming from, where this confusion is coming from. And I'm never shy to use myself as an example. And I've done that with this person too. Like, hey, I had to get help. In order to be a better mother and a better wife, I had to get help. To be a better person at function, this is what I had to do. And I always tell that person that. But I've also had to, sometimes I can't because my plate is full and I can't take extra. And then that's when I'm like, okay, I got to tag out today. I love you, but I got to tag out today. I got to kind of let you steer your own mess today. They coming over that hump. So I'm glad to say God is good. They kind of getting that mental health refresh that they need.
Yeah. I also have a loved one who if I say this, you're gonna know who I'm talking about. I'll say it. So who was in the Vietnam War. And growing up, but at the time I didn't get it. So I was like, I don't get this. But as I got old, I said, oh, I get it. And they have talked to me briefly about things, and they'll discuss certain things with me, and I will listen and I will understand. But I also look at it as as strength to say that, you know, it's like, man, this person been and still going through things every day and going out grinding, you know, making sure that everything is taken care of, making sure that everything, and he is walking in that, you know, and that is that's a dope thing. You know, you gotta, even though people do, you gotta look at it and say, okay, what can I grasp? What am I seeing? What can I grasp from this? And I look at it as inspiration to this person is walking every day and went through all of this and is still walking and striving every day to be the best person that they can be. So yeah.
Shout out to the armed forces members.
Yeah.
If you need therapy, get therapy too. Don't think you're a big, strong soldier that can't ever have a breakdown, because that's definitely not true. Mm-hmm. And yeah, if you need help, seek help.
True.
I haven't dealt with anyone close to me who has had mental health issues, but my husband and I have been monitoring our 6-year-old because she's been having outbursts recently. And we don't know if it's because she's cooped up in the house, but we've been kind of monitoring them, and we're just trying to make sure that it doesn't turn into anything worse. We originally were going to keep her home CPS. She's in CPS, but I think we're going to try to send her back because we feel like the lack of social interaction has something to do with it. And it's not just that, but also her younger sister is at daycare. So we feel like there's jealousy there. Like, Valentine's party just happened. The holiday party that she's having, she comes home with her stuff, talking about her friends, both the younger one and the older one is seeing all of that. And I think there's something missing. So we have been monitoring that. It's little, but I feel like the kids are going through that. That's what's so scary. It's like you have to make this decision of, do I send my kids back to school where they could potentially be unsafe, or do I keep them home? But then this is a this is a scary thing as well, because she's a very logical person. You know, I know her very well. So to watch her change has been tough.
Mental health on kids, I mean, especially that young, but any kids in general, it's rough. To make that decision is really, really hard, but you do have to weigh like what is riskier. For the most part, a lot of kids don't, obviously there's exceptions, but for the most part, kids don't have a super bad reaction to COVID. So it's like, what's riskier, keeping them at home where you're affecting their mental health, or like exposing them to COVID where there's like a really, 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 really good chance they'll be okay. It is a rough, like, I understand, and then for families who have like people at risk in their house and they can't, all of that stuff is just so rough. But yeah, you do definitely have to monitor your kids and make sure you're doing what's best for them, because the younger they are, to me, the harder it would be. Like, it would be different if you have maybe like a kid who never been to school and they don't really know what they're missing. But kids who've been in school for a couple of years already, man, I can't even imagine. I'm kind of really happy I don't have a grade schooler, because I don't know what I would do. Like, high schoolers, they can kind of tell you, maybe not all high schoolers do, but if you have a relationship with your teenager where you keep, checking on them, trying to get them to talk. But little ones, yeah, you really, really got to be careful. Even high schoolers too. Let them out of the house sometimes, guys. Let them out sometimes. They're gonna go nuts. I'm just saying.
It's true. All right. So I know we had talked a little bit about mental health and how we're dealing with it.
There was another comment. Says, I feel that so much. Your words are resonating. Thank you for sharing. So true about therapists too. We have to try them out and find the right fit for us. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I was just going to say, so we've talked about how we're dealing with it with our resources, but do you guys feel like mental health resources are readily available as they should be? And just make that.
Definitely not. I don't think so. It depends on where you live and what and what you have access to. I don't think there's nearly enough in poorer communities. There's just it's just not there. Like there's so many opportunities, and I don't know where Illinois stands now, but some years ago, back when I was in school, we were ranked like number 48 or so on like mental health funding in states. So that's like almost close to last. I hope we got better, but I have my doubts considering all of the budget cuts this state is always going through. So yeah, no, I mean, for some people, yes, but for the people who probably need it the most, I don't believe there's enough available.
Yeah.
So I will say that I am grateful that like Action for Kids and Public Assistance, they pay for counseling services, which is a huge thing, especially if you're not working, but the state helps you pay for it. That's a blessing. I do have family members who are severely affected by mental health, and when they cut the programs a few years ago, they've been left with nothing. So they're essentially lost because before there were programs that helped them get jobs and places to stay, but after that it's like nowhere, which didn't help. Then it just helped them tumble more because it's like a loss, like you've lost pretty much everything. So no. And then we see on TV now when people call the police because there's nowhere else to turn, and they end up losing a family member because they didn't know who else to call.
Right. And I had just posted that article in our chat, our group chat, about Denver, the city of Denver, and I'm sure they're the only city who implemented their STAR program. Let me see, I think they had like over 700 calls in 6 months, and none of them led to an arrest. They sent out the right people to, basically it was in place of 911, get a call and it's mental health related. They sent out people who can help with mental health issues versus the police. And they were able to address every call that they were called to without any arrest, without any issues. And that's been around 6 months, and it's successful, and they're going to keep doing it. And hope other cities like us, like Chicago, get on, because it's so, like you said, it's so important. And then these people aren't getting the help that they need, so then they become violent. Some of them violent or whatever it is, and now you're getting arrested, which is the complete opposite of what they need. I'm happy programs like that are starting to pop up, but I agree that mental health resources are just not as readily available as they need to be. I think because it's so taboo, because people don't want to admit that not only that they're sick, but that maybe someone around them is dealing with some issues. And like you said, keep it in your household. There's probably so many reasons why we don't want to talk about it, but it's so important, and we need to push for the help that people need.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just thinking about, when I was in education, about how, you never know what kids go home to and if it's being talked to, and then the stigma that's on mental health, and then how the parent is dealing with it. And then people, well, my kid not crazy. It ain't nothing about crazy. It's just about making sure they're the whole child, and that being, their needs are being met so that they can be a better, so they can deal with their own issues and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're already at 50 minutes. So the last question I was just going to try to see if we could all answer is, what advice do you all have for others dealing with similar thoughts and feelings? Just if you had to wrap it up into one nice little or a few sentences.
Aaron, I appreciate that information about Action for Kids and stuff, paying for that stuff. I didn't know that. So that if people out there don't know about that, that's an awesome resource, because then you don't have to worry about, where maybe they can help you find people. Definitely nowadays you can Google anything. So Google whatever resources you can. Go to the library if you have to and Google it. Go wherever you can find the information, but it's definitely out there. Don't be scared to get help. Try on therapists, like Aaron said. if you really, really need medication, because there's some people where medication really does help and is necessary, try different medications. Just because one makes you feel like a zombie doesn't mean they all will. You might have to change dosages. You might have to try different medications, but definitely don't give up right away. And just, talk to somebody, anybody. And we have the different hotlines at the bottom. If you need to seek out any like immediate help or information, definitely use those crisis hotlines and suicide prevention hotlines, because I know suicide rates are up right now with COVID. Yeah, let me stop talking.
I feel like phone a friend. Phone a friend, phone a friend, phone a friend. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Don't try to internalize it, because it becomes more of a struggle. And sometimes the things that you think are so minute, you would be surprised where it leads back to. You would be surprised that there's actually a root cause for it. So reach out, talk to somebody you can trust, and then it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to be different. Nobody is cookie cutter. We all have our own stuff.
As you guys are going around doing your closing, going on the close, I was thinking about, specifically men, and not just that men don't talk a lot about their issues. And if and this is just, not trying to single anybody out, but coming from a man that dealt with issues myself, I could have did better I would have dealt better and had better situations if I had like an older, I had my father there and things like that. And, sometimes, like LaShawn talking about, sometimes you being a teenager, you may not want to talk to your parents about certain things. You may be uncomfortable in certain areas. So I just encourage, just men, find somebody you trust, you have a good rapport with, somebody that you rock with on, that you feel like they can give you, good counsel, wise counsel. If you're going through something, reach out. There are a lot of male therapists, and that was one thing that when I started back going to, I wanted to get a male therapist because I wanted to talk about men issues and about things that's going on with the men and how it is, this is what I deal with. This is what I deal with. My low self-esteem, my anxiety, things like that. And that's one thing that's one thing I had to do. So I just want to encourage, if you are a man, you listen to this, it's okay to see a therapist. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you're just trying to get help. So.
And can I piggyback, because Aunt just reminded me on something I want to share too. As we are adults, reach back, find a kid that you influence, whether if it's not your own kids, if your nieces, your nephews, your cousin, reach out, extend an olive branch, like, hey, I'm here for you. That's so important, because there might not be a comfort level for them to reach out. But I feel like if you let them know that you are there for them just in case, that might help them 100%. You don't even know what you could have done for them. So please phone a kid, essentially, and be that person for them. And then also at the end of this, if anybody needs any counseling services, I know some people. So feel free to comment in the chat, the Chit Chat Chill, send a message to Chit Chat Chill. If you know me, text me, whatever, and I can give you some recommendations.
And be empathetic. That's one thing I want to add in there. If you're not going through anything, because some people don't have mental, health struggles, and that's awesome. I mean, it's not, like everyone does, but be empathetic to the people who are reaching out. Don't, write them off as crazy or whatever the case may be, because that's why the topic is so taboo now. People are not being empathetic to each other. Just listen. Try to, you don't have to even say anything half the time. Sometimes people just need to vent and for you to not be mean. It's just that simple. You don't have to be mean. That's all.
I have nothing more to add to that. I think that was all perfect. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining. I hope everyone got something out of this, and that's all. All right, thanks guys.
Thank you so much for joining our discussion. Be sure to go and check out our other discussions on our website at chitchatchill.com. Also, support a small business and check out our merchandise, also on our website at chitchatchill.com/shop.